Hello and welcome to Workers Comp Unwrapped, the podcast that simplifies workers' compensation for physicians. So, let's get started. If you want to bankrupt a medical clinic, do not deny their claims. Accept them. Welcome to Season 4 of Workers Comp Unwrapped. I'm your host, and with me today is our industry guest.
Hi, everyone. I'm really glad to be here for this one.
Today's deep dive is pulling from a stack of industry insights to look at the really terrifying reality of revenue leakage.
Right, which is something that affects almost every practice across the country every single day.
Exactly. Because we usually picture financial loss in medical billing as this massive, glaring red denied stamp, like it is loud and alarms go off.
Yeah, and someone is immediately assigned to fix that loud rejection. But the real threat is quiet.
It is the invisible trickle of money slipping out the back door while everybody is, busy celebrating their perceived wins. Okay. Let's unpack this, because to really grasp what we are talking about today, we have to completely change how we visualize loss.
You really do, because these losses happen in the smallest of gaps, like missteps or vague documentation.
Right, so forget the old cliche of a bucket with a hole in it where water is visibly splashing onto the floor and you grab a mop. Think of revenue leakage more like phantom power draw in your house.
Oh, that is a really great way to put it.
You turn off the lights, you turn off the television, and you think you are saving electricity. But your appliances are still plugged into the wall on standby mode. The microwave clock is running.
Exactly. The chargers are drawing current. Nothing looks overtly wrong, but slowly your electricity bill is just climbing and climbing.
Yeah, and today, we are hunting down that phantom power draw in workers' comp billing.
And that phantom power analogy is perfect because once you understand what revenue leakage actually is, you have to look at why it stays hidden for so long.
Right, why do we not see it happening?
Well, there is a counterintuitive truth at the heart of modern medical billing. The place where a practice loses the most money quietly actually lies in the claims that are accepted by the payer.
Accepted. Accepted is the goal line, right? That is what the entire administrative team is running toward. If a claim is accepted, that means you won.
It is, but because the claim is not denied, absolutely no automated system flags an error. There is no red ink anywhere.
So no alarms go off in the billing department software at all?
None. The payer accepted the claim, a check was cut, the balance cleared, and the team just moves on to the next patient.
Wow, so the transaction looks completely clean on the surface.
Exactly. The system just does not know what was left off the invoice. The check that arrived might only be for a fraction of the work actually performed.
Oh, wow.
But the software only sees that the invoice was paid in full.
I have to play devil's advocate here, because I am putting myself in the shoes of a medical provider. If a clinician delivers a service, the work is done right. The patient is sitting right there getting better.
Right.
So how does a business just forget to charge for the full scope of what they physically did? Is the clinical staff just unaware of what they are legally allowed to bill for?
What is fascinating here is that it is rarely a lack of clinical knowledge. The doctors, the nurses, the physical therapists, they know exactly what they are doing medically.
So what is the disconnect?
This is almost entirely a workflow and habit issue driven by environmental pressure. You have these extremely busy teams seeing maybe 40 or 50 patients a day.
Oh, so there's just constant pressure to move to the next exam room.
Exactly. So when teams rely on rote habits or they rush through their coding simply to get the chart closed out, they capture the primary reason for the visit.
But they routinely miss the secondary services.
Right. They miss the extended time they spent explaining a diagnosis or maybe the additional complex supplies they used. It is not a knowledge gap. It is a process gap created by speed.
Okay, so we know this leakage happens invisibly, hiding behind the very claims we consider wins. We need to locate exactly where these phantom power draws are happening in the real world.
We really do need to map it out. Let's examine the 3 most common fault lines where this happens.
Let's walk through this chronologically. A patient gets injured at work, they walk into a clinic. What is the first trap waiting for them?
Well, before the patient even sits on the exam table, the clinic hits the first major fault line, which is the RFA, or request for authorization.
Because workers' comp is fundamentally different from standard health insurance.
Exactly. With standard insurance, a doctor often treats you and bills the insurance company after the fact. But workers' comp requires explicit legal permission for almost every single intervention before it happens.
So the RFA is that permission slip. It sounds simple enough, though. You ask for permission, you get it, you treat the patient.
You would think so, but the mechanism of getting that permission is where the revenue leaks.
can you give us a real-world scenario for how that actually breaks down?
Sure. Let's look at a realistic situation. A doctor evaluates a patient with a complex knee injury and recommends a very specific course of physical therapy. It involves standard exercises, but also specialized manual therapy and custom taping.
Okay, so a comprehensive plan.
Right. The provider treats the patient, assuming the front desk handled the comprehensive RFA, or assuming the specialized additions will just be rubber stamped.
But let me guess, they were not.
Right. Behind the scenes, the front desk only submitted the RFA for standard physical therapy. They did not include the request for manual therapy or the supplies for the taping.
Oh, I see. But the patient still needs the treatment, so the physical therapist does all the work anyway. They do the standard exercises, the manual therapy, and the taping.
Yes, and fast forward to the billing phase weeks later. The payer looks at the bill, they see the standard physical therapy, match it to the approved RFA, and pay it.
So the claim is officially marked accepted.
Yes, but they silently ignore or strip out the manual therapy and the taping because there was no strong authorization supporting those specific line items.
Wow, so the front-end process was disconnected from the clinical reality, and the billing side just inherits a fundamentally flawed foundation.
Exactly. The clinic just absorbed the cost of that specialized labor and those supplies.
So the leak does not start when you send the bill. The leak starts weeks earlier when the communication between the exam room and the front desk breaks down over a piece of paper.
It really does. It is not just about submitting a form. It requires submitting the precise clinical plan, rigorous tracking, and relentless follow-up.
Because if the clinical team and the administrative team are not speaking the exact same language regarding what is on that RFA,
the revenue is lost before the patient even takes their coat off.
Okay, let's move to the next phase of the patient journey. The RFA is handled, the treatment is happening. This brings us to the actual coding of the services, which our sources identify as a massive area for underbilling.
Right, and this goes beyond just forgetting to write something down. It gets deeply technical very quickly.
How so?
Providers will consistently and successfully bill for the main service, the big ticket item of the visit, but they routinely miss the specific modifiers and supplementary codes that surround that service.
You mean the little additions that tell the payer they did something extra?
Exactly. In medical billing, you have CPT codes, which describe what was done. You also have modifiers, which are 2-digit additions to a code that tell the payer we did something extra or distinct here.
Got it.
So if a doctor evaluates a patient's injured shoulder, but then also performs a completely separate, significant evaluation of their opposite knee during the same visit,
they need to append a specific modifier to ensure they get paid for both.
often modifier 25, yes.
Here is where it gets incredibly interesting, because a specific image pops into my head when looking at how these secondary codes get dropped.
Oh, I like analogies. Let's hear it.
It is like taking your car to a mechanic to get the engine rebuilt. The mechanic does an incredible job. The car runs beautifully, but when they write up the invoice, they charge you for the engine rebuild and completely forget to charge you for the specialized synthetic oil they used.
Right, or the brand new spark plugs they installed.
Exactly. And the extra 2 hours of highly specialized labor it took to clean the manifold. The main service is billed and paid. The transaction looks successful, but the materials and the time are just lost to the ether.
That is a perfect analogy. In workers' comp, the medical provider is the mechanic absorbing the cost of the spark plugs.
Wow.
The main service is delivered, the patient recovers, but the billing software does not reflect reality. And beyond modifiers, time-based codes are a massive phantom draw.
Because time is literally money in these clinics.
Yes. Many billing codes are strictly based on the time spent with the patient. If a physician spends 45 minutes managing a highly complex case, but their electronic medical record system defaults to a standard 15-minute visit code.
That is 30 minutes of highly specialized, completely uncompensated labor.
And because the 15-minute code goes through without a hitch, it never raises a red flag.
We have the breakdown at the authorization phase and the underbilling in the exam room. After the patient leaves, the clinical notes have to be written.
Yes. Which brings us to the third fault line, documentation workflows.
Our sources point to this as the final fatal trap.
It is the foundation. You could have a situation where the clinical care was flawless, literally perfect execution of medical science. The doctor even remembered the spark plugs and the extra time.
But if the record is sloppy,
the revenue for that perfect care still evaporates. In workers' comp, clarity is not just a best practice, it is everything.
is it really that difficult to just write down what you did? I'm trying to understand the friction here. Why are highly educated professionals failing to document their own work?
Well, consider the reality of electronic medical record fatigue. Doctors are interacting with clunky software all day.
Oh, so they are just exhausted by the system itself.
Exactly. You have different providers within the exact same clinic using completely different structures, personal shorthand, or outdated templates to document their work.
So there is no standard language.
No. One doctor writes a detailed paragraph explaining why they spent an extra 20 minutes with the patient. Another doctor just types, patient improving, continue plan for the exact same level of complex care.
And when the billing team looks at that second note, they cannot legally justify billing for the complex care or the extra time.
Right. They're forced to downcode the visit to a lower paying tier just to get the claim out the door legally.
The sources talk heavily about the silo effect exacerbating this exact issue, right?
Yes, the silo effect is deadly here.
Yeah.
If your clinical team, your administrative front desk, and your back office billing teams are all working in total isolation, information gets lost in the handoff.
The doctor knows what they did, but they do not talk to the biller.
Exactly. The biller sees a vague note and downcodes it, but never tells the doctor they are losing money based on their shorthand. Workers' Comp requires extremely tight alignment across all three of those domains.
So we have a very clear picture of the ecosystem now. The authorization, the treatment codes, the documentation, they're not isolated steps.
No, they are links in a single chain. The RFAs support the treatment, documentation supports both the treatment and the billing, and coding translates that documentation into revenue.
And if a single link breaks, the whole chain falls apart. The money quietly drains away. So fixing this is not about applying a single Band-Aid, is it?
Not at all. It requires a really holistic approach.
So how does a provider detect these silent interconnected issues if they do not trigger any denial alarms?
You have to look for specific warning signs. You have to review patterns and do a comparison exercise. You are literally matching documentation against what was ultimately billed.
What kind of red flags are they looking for operationally?
Things like inconsistent workflows, delayed documentation, or a lack of tracking systems, and especially what we just talked about, clinical, admin, and billing teams working in isolated silos.
Now that we have a map of the traps, how do we build a system that prevents the revenue from leaking in the first place? A common reaction from clinic management might be to just hire more billing staff to catch the errors.
Oh, throwing more bodies at a broken process just means you process flawed information faster.
Right, more billers cannot fix a bad clinical note or a missed RFA.
Exactly. You have to force the issue systemically. The absolute first step a practice must take is to map their current workflow, from the moment a patient walks in to the moment the bill drops.
You have to visually lay out the process to make the invisible leaks visible. Where does the RFA get handed off? Who checks the modifiers?
Yes, and once you find those inconsistencies, you have to standardize.
Let's look at the friction of actually doing that. Mapping a workflow sounds great in a boardroom, but you have to force standardization. Doctors are famously resistant to changing their clinical habits or being told how to write their notes.
Totally.
How do you actually standardize a busy surgeon?
You do not tell them how to practice medicine. You change the architecture of their tools. You standardize the documentation templates within the electronic medical record system.
Okay, so making it systemic.
Right. Instead of giving them a blank text box where one doctor writes a novel and another writes a sentence, you build drop-down menus and mandatory fields. You force them to select the time spent and the supplies used before they can even close the chart.
Oh, you engineer the process so that doing it the right way is actually the easiest path.
Yeah.
That removes the human error element entirely from the coding side.
It dramatically reduces the variation, for sure. Once you have a standardized map, you implement rigorous tracking. You maintain strict control over the timelines.
Like, how long is it taking for an RFA to be submitted after the doctor requests it?
Yes, or how many days sit between a patient visit and the clinical note being signed. The goal of tracking is to take a missed administrative step and immediately pull it out of the shadows.
Even with great templates and tracking dashboards, you still need the humans to care about the process. How do you train a team to actually value these administrative hurdles? Handing a front desk worker a new manual on regulations is not going to change their daily habits.
Training cannot be about teaching the what. It has to be entirely focused on the why. Why?
Right. When a front desk worker understands that failing to track a specific RFA literally prevents the clinic from being paid for a complex surgery down the line, they see their actual impact.
And when you show a surgeon how their personal shorthand in the clinical notes resulted in a 30% drop in their department's revenue.
Revenue that could have been used to buy the new ultrasound machine they have been asking for. The pushback against administrative changes disappears pretty fast.
Understanding the impact drives consistency. You are shifting them from TaskRabbits checking boxes into actual stakeholders who understand the business of the clinic.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the ultimate solution here is a massive mindset shift across the entire industry.
Which is?
Providers, clinic owners, and billing directors must actively stop obsessing solely over what gets denied. Managing denials is necessary, of course, but you have to start heavily, critically scrutinizing what gets accepted but undervalued. The hidden loss is sitting right there in your win column. So what does this all mean for the listener tuning in today? Maybe they are managing a clinic, or perhaps they are a clinician themselves. What is one practical, immediate step they can take today?
Do a forensic accounting exercise on your own practice. Pull a small sample, just 3 to 5 recent claims that were successfully accepted and paid by the workers' comp payer.
Just a small sample.
Yes. Review them end to end. Print out the clinical treatment notes, the original authorization documents, and the final billing codes. Lay them all out side by side on a desk and aggressively compare them.
Look for the spark plugs.
Look for the spark plugs. You will almost certainly spot a misalignment. You will see a complex service or an extended time block explicitly mentioned in the doctor's notes that simply does not exist on the final bill.
And finding that single dropped code shows you exactly where your specific workflow is broken. Playing spot the difference between the medical chart and the financial receipt. I love the practicality of that.
It is incredibly effective.
Well, it brings me to a final thought I want to leave you, the listener, with today. As we have been talking about medical codes, clinical workflows, and invisible loss, I cannot help but see how this applies to almost everything we do.
Oh, I am curious where you are going with this.
Think about the hidden leaks, the phantom power draw, in your own professional life, completely outside the world of medical billing. Where are you putting in the hard work, delivering real value in your projects or your career, but failing to get the full credit simply because your personal tracking, communication, or documentation process is broken?
Wow, that is a really profound way to look at it.
Right. Where is your main engine rebuild being recognized by your boss or your clients, while all your specialized labor and spark plugs are going totally unnoticed? We all have blind spots where our effort does not translate into recognized value because of a flawed system.
We definitely do. It is such a vital thing to reflect on.
It is time to take a close look at your own workflows, professional or otherwise, and hunt down those phantom power draws. Because it is not just the massive dramatic failures that set us back. It is the quiet, invisible trickle that leaves you wondering where all your hard work went. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Go patch those leaky buckets and we will catch you on the next one. Thanks for listening to Workers Comp Unwrapped. If you found value in today's episode, subscribe and share with fellow doctors. Stay informed and keep making a difference in your patients' care.